Billionaire love stories. The elevator doors slid shut, and through the glass I watched my boss's face freeze in disbelief. 22 years. 22 years I had poured into that company. And it ended in 30 seconds with a cardboard box in my hands and a security badge that no longer worked. My name is Marcus Ellison. I'm 47 years old. And I had just been fired. On the very morning we were supposed to sign a $580 million government defense contract. 22 years and I didn't even get a handshake goodbye. Please like this video and listen to my story till the end. And let me know which city you're listening from. That way I can see how far my story has traveled. As the elevator hummed downward, my phone buzzed in my coat pocket. I already knew it wasn't going to be good news. I looked at the name on the screen, Colonel Harmon. The man whose defense team had flown in that morning from Washington. The man I had spent 14 months building trust with. The man who was standing in our lobby right now, ready to shake hands and sign the biggest deal our company had ever seen. I had spent the last 22 years becoming the kind of engineer that phone calls like this were made for. I adjusted the old watch on my wrist, a vintage piece my grandfather had left me, worn smooth at the edges now, and I answered. Marcus. My team's been in the lobby for 20 minutes. We're ready. Where are you? I exhaled slowly. There's been a system failure on my end, Colonel. My access has been revoked. Effective immediately. Silence. The kind of silence that carries weight. Then his voice low and confused. What on earth are you talking about? You're the architect of this entire contract. The elevator opened into the lobby. And I saw him, Colonel Harmon, standing with his procurement team, phone pressed to his ear, his free hand gesturing in bewilderment. And behind him, leaning casually against the reception desk with his arms crossed, was Raymond Pierce. Nathan, 29 years old. MBA from a school his father had donated a building to. 6 months with the company. The new VP of Operations, a title handed to him the same week his father, Raymond Pierce, had bought out the board. Nathan had been watching me for weeks. I could feel it. The sideways glances in board meetings, the slow erosion of my responsibilities, the way he'd repeat my own ideas back to rooms full of people as though they were his own. But I never thought, not once, that he would do something like this. Not on signing day. Not with $580 million on the table. I told the colonel the truth. No system failure. Just corporate politics. I suggest you speak directly with the company's new representatives. I walked out of that elevator with my cardboard box and my grandfather's watch, and I kept my chin level because I refused to let anyone in that lobby see me break. Colonel Harmon spotted me immediately. He ended his call and walked straight toward me, hand extended. Marcus. Ready to make history today. I could feel Nathan watching from across the lobby. I kept my voice calm. Permission denied, Colonel. They've just cut my credentials. The colonel's face hardened. He turned toward Nathan, who was now approaching us with that practiced confidence, that entitled swagger that men like him spend their whole lives polishing. You did what? Harmon's voice was quiet but absolute. Nathan blinked. I was just enforcing company policy. Marcus refused to implement the new user monitoring protocols. That's insubordination. And then Colonel Harmon said the words that made the entire lobby go still. You fired the chief architect of a nearly $600 million defense contract because he wouldn't install surveillance software on government systems? Nathan's mouth opened. Nothing came out. Raymond Pierce appeared then, rushing from the elevator with 2 board members at his heels. Colonel, please, this is a miscommunication. Marcus is essential to us. Deeply valued. Deeply valued. I almost laughed. These were the same people who had watched Nathan strip away my responsibilities month by month, meeting by meeting, and had said nothing. Not one word. I stood there, holding that cardboard box, watching 22 years of relationships and reputation dissolve in real time. The security architecture I had built from scratch. The government trust one had earned over a decade of late nights and careful work. All of it crumbling. Raymond approached me, his voice low and urgent. Marcus, let's take this upstairs. Nathan is new to leadership. He made a mistake. We can fix this. I looked at him for a long moment. Then I spoke, loudly enough for the room to hear. Your son made a choice. And you backed him with your silence. I accept the termination. The colonel shook his head. He turned back to Raymond Pierce with the measured calm of a man who has spent decades making decisions that cost lives or save them. Our contract was built around Marcus Ellison. He is the only person who understands both our technical requirements and our operational priorities. Without him, we are not comfortable moving forward. Raymond went pale. But the contracts are drafted. The press announcement is scheduled. Section 12, subsection 4 of your own proposal, the colonel said. You have a key personnel clause. Marcus Ellison is named specifically. If he leaves the company before execution, for any reason other than illness or death, we may withdraw without penalty. One of the company's own lawyers leaned over and whispered to Raymond. Marcus wrote that clause himself. He flagged its significance during contract review. And it was true. I had insisted on it. Standard protection for critical personnel. I never imagined I would be the one it protected from my own company. The colonel extended his hand to me one final time. Marcus, when you're ready to build something new, call me. Engineers with your integrity are rare. And then he and his team walked out. And the lobby was silent. And I walked out too. Outside, the morning air felt different. Cleaner somehow. Colder. I sat in my car for a long time. Not moving, my grandfather's watch ticking quietly on my wrist. I had no job. No income. And I had just watched the greatest achievement of my career collapse in a hotel lobby. But somewhere deep inside me, quiet and stubborn, something else was already stirring. I didn't call anyone for a week. I powered down my phone, sat on my back deck and watched the clouds move. And I know that might sound small watching clouds, but I want you to understand something. I hadn't watched clouds in 11 years. I hadn't been home before dark in longer than I could remember. I hadn't cooked a real meal, hadn't called my brother just to talk, hadn't sat somewhere quiet without a laptop or a deadline or someone needing something from me. They took my job. And in doing so, they accidentally gave me back my life. But I'm not going to pretend it didn't hurt. Because it did. Every morning that first week, I woke up at 5:30 out of habit, and there was this half-second where I forgot. And then I remembered. And that half-second, that tiny window before the memory returned, that was the hardest part of every single day. Has someone ever taken something from you that you'd given everything to build? Drop a red heart in the comments if you've ever had to start over from nothing. I read every single one. Market alerts started appearing on my tablet 3 days after I walked out. Our company's stock had dropped 28% on rumors the defense contract had collapsed. By the following morning, it had lost another 14%. 42% in 48 hours. Thousands of jobs, good people who had nothing to do with what Nathan Pierce had done, were suddenly at risk. People who had worked alongside me for years. People who had families to feed, mortgages to pay, kids in school. Part of me felt responsible. But a stronger part of me understood I didn't crash that system. Their leadership did. I called my brother Daniel in Denver on day 4. We talked for 2 hours. I hadn't talked to Daniel for 2 hours since our mother was in the hospital 3 years ago. And the things he said cut right through me. Marcus, he said. I haven't heard you sound like yourself in years. Getting fired might be the best thing that ever happened to you. I laughed at that. A real laugh, not the polished professional kind. And then I got quiet. 22 years, Daniel. I gave them 22 years. And they let a 29-year-old kid with a borrowed title erase me in a single morning. And what did they give you? He asked. I didn't have an answer. Not a good one. 13 days after my termination, Raymond Pierce finally got through to me. I almost didn't answer. My hand hovered over the screen for a long moment, and then something, call it curiosity, call it the echo of 22 years, made me pick up. Marcus. His voice sounded hollow. Older. The board wants to meet with you. Things here are. It's worse than we projected. I'm listening. We need you. To fix this. To bring Harmon's team back to the table. To save the company. There was a long pause. I let it stretch. The same company that terminated me for refusing to install surveillance software on government systems? His sigh carried the full weight of a man who knows he made a catastrophic mistake and has no good way to undo it. Nathan has been reassigned. I've been formally reprimanded by the board. But Marcus, thousands of people. I knew what he was doing. And I knew he was right about the people. Those were real human beings with real lives. And regardless of what Raymond Pierce or his son had done to me, I was not the kind of man who could watch innocent people lose everything and do nothing. But I was also done being the kind of man who walked back into a burning building without terms. "What's your offer?" I asked. "Come to the board meeting tomorrow. Name your parameters." I thought about it for exactly 1 moment. Then, "I'll run diagnostics on it." I ended the call. That night I didn't sleep. I sat at my kitchen table with a yellow legal pad and a pen. No laptop, no screens, and I wrote down for the first time in my life everything I actually wanted. Not what the job required. Not what the company needed. What I, Marcus Ellison, wanted. By 3 in the morning I had my list. And I was ready. But nothing could have prepared me for what happened when I walked back into that boardroom. Because I didn't walk in to beg. I walked in to negotiate. And what I asked for and what they agreed to will change everything. I wore the same clothes I had been fired in. Khaki trousers, a button-down shirt, and my grandfather's watch. It wasn't an accident. It wasn't a fashion choice. It was a statement. I had been removed from that building looking exactly like this, and I was walking back and looking exactly the same because I had not changed and I had not broken, and I needed every single person in that boardroom to understand that. They stood when I entered. The whole board. On their feet like they were greeting someone important. I had never felt so many things at once in my life. Vindication, grief, anger, and something that I can only describe as a deep bone-level resolve. Raymond Pierce looked like a man running on 4 days of no sleep, which is probably exactly what he was. Nathan was absent. Conspicuously, deliberately absent. "Thank you for coming, Marcus," the chairman said. "We appreciate your willingness." "Let's skip the pleasantries," I said, taking my seat. I opened my briefcase and set a folder on the table. "Since I left, your stock has dropped 42%. 3 major clients have initiated contract reviews. The financial press is running daily speculation about bankruptcy timelines. The Peterson contract, which was your primary revenue stream for the next 5 years, is gone. Even if I could convince Colonel Harmon to reconsider, the terms would be substantially less favorable. You need to understand all of that before we discuss what it's going to take for me to help you." Grim nods around the table. No one argued with any of it. "Why should I help you?" I asked. And I looked at every face one by one. You all sat in silence while a 29-year-old with 6 months of experience fired me for taking an ethical stand. Not one of you picked up the phone. Not one of you walked into Raymond's office and said, "This is wrong." The chairs shifted. Throats cleared. Someone looked at the ceiling. "We made a critical error," the chairman finally said. "What would it take for you to return?" I slid the folder across the table. Full reinstatement at triple my previous salary. A seat on the board. Complete authority over all technical strategy. Significant equity participation. And one additional clause. Any new intellectual property I develop while employed here remains 70% my personal property. The company may hold 30%, but I retain controlling interest in all licensing rights. One of the board members looked up from the folder, eyebrows raised. "That last clause is highly unusual. So is firing your chief technology officer over security ethics on the morning of a $580 million contract signing," I said. "Consider it insurance." They looked at each other. That silent language that boards speak. Glances loaded with calculation, with risk assessment, with the arithmetic of desperation. And then one by one they signed. Raymond was last. His pen hovered over the page for what felt like a full minute. And then he signed his name. "When can you start?" the chairman asked. "I already have," I said and stood. "I'll be in my office." That night I called Colonel Harmon. The conversation lasted nearly 2 hours, and it was one of the hardest conversations I have ever had. He trusted me, and his trust had been used as collateral in a game I hadn't agreed to play. "Your company showed its true priorities, Marcus," he said. "Why would I trust them again?" "You wouldn't be trusting them," I told him. "You'd be trusting me. And I now have the authority to guarantee what I promise." It took 2 hours of honest conversation. 2 hours of me acknowledging everything that had gone wrong, and explaining exactly what was different now, and what would never happen again. He agreed to consider a revised proposal. The new contract value would be $380 million over 5 years. Not the original 580. But it was something. And something built on real trust is always worth more than nothing built on hollow promises. Have you ever had to fight your way back after someone else's mistake cost you everything? I want to hear from you. Comment below. Your story might be exactly what someone else needs to read today. Over the following weeks, I worked systematically. I restructured departments that needed restructuring. I repaired client relationships that had frayed in my absence. I held long, difficult meetings with people who deserved honesty about where the company stood and what it was going to take to recover. I occasionally passed Nathan in the hallways. He always found somewhere else to look. I never approached him, never mentioned his name in meetings, never referenced what he'd done. He existed in the company the way a footnote exists in a document, present but irrelevant to the main text. But something else was beginning to take shape. Something quiet. Something I had been turning over in my mind since the night I sat at my kitchen table with that yellow legal pad. That unusual clause in my contract, the intellectual property clause, hadn't been an accident. I had written it with a specific purpose in mind, and now it was time to build. They thought firing me was the ending, but I had already started writing the next chapter, and what I was about to build would shake every single person in that company to their core. I started quietly. I went to Elena Vasquez, the head of product development, one of the most genuinely talented engineers I had ever worked with, someone who had spent years being underutilized in a company that kept promoting people based on last names instead of ability. Elena, I said over coffee one morning, I need a side project. Something small, experimental. Can your team support it? She didn't hesitate. What kind of project? Cybersecurity for small and medium businesses, I told her. Most existing solutions are either too expensive, too complex, or too invasive. I want to build something different. Protection without surveillance. Security without monitoring. She looked at me for a long moment. That's outside our current market. Exactly, I said. Within days, Elena had assembled a small team. We worked evenings. We worked weekends. We did market research, built prototypes, tested frameworks. The idea at the core of everything we built was simple, and it had grown directly from what Nathan Pierce had tried to force me to do, what I had been fired for refusing to do. Real security does not require watching people. Real protection does not mean surveillance. You can defend a system completely without treating the people inside it like suspects. Why not just build enterprise level from the start? One of the team asked me one late night, surrounded by whiteboards and empty coffee cups. Because small businesses deserve enterprise-grade protection, I said. They just don't deserve enterprise-grade surveillance. The team caught fire. They saw it, the elegance of the challenge, the genuine market need, the chance to build something that had never quite been built this way before. And slowly, carefully, beautifully, ShieldCore was born. Within 6 months of my return, we had a functional prototype. We had a manufacturing partner. We had a growing list of clients who were already asking when they could get their hands on it. We had a website, a brand, and a launch date. And we had a philosophy baked into every single line of code. Protect without invading. Secure without surveilling. I called a company-wide meeting the day before launch. Everyone came. Because when I called meetings now, people came not because they were afraid but because they knew something real would be said. I stood at the front of the room and I felt, for the first time in a very long time, completely myself. I looked at the rows of faces. Engineers, executives, marketing teams, support staff. And in the very back row, half hidden behind a pillar, sat Nathan Pierce. A year ago, I began. I was fired from this company for refusing to compromise the security principles I had spent 22 years building. Today, I want to show you what I built from that moment. I clicked to the first slide. ShieldCore. The logo was clean, simple, and strong. These aren't just security systems, I said. They're a statement. Every component in this platform was built around a single question. How do you protect people without betraying them? I demonstrated the architecture, showed how it could scale from a small office setup to full enterprise-level threat detection, with a single configuration change, while maintaining complete privacy protection for every user. No more choosing between security and privacy, I said. No more surveillance-based protection systems. Just real defense. Real integrity. The room was perfectly still. I advanced to the next slide. Projected revenue figures. confirmed manufacturing partnerships, distribution channels, letters of intent from potential clients that filled 3 pages. And then I said it plainly. Thanks to my employment contract, which grants me controlling interest in new intellectual property I develop, ShieldCore will operate as an independent entity. This company holds 30% ownership. I hold the rest. Raymond Pierce stood up. This is the first I'm hearing about a launch tomorrow, Marcus. The board should review. The board approved my contract, I said calmly, which gives me autonomy over intellectual property development. I welcome your support. The timing is optimized for market conditions. I turned back to the room. This isn't just about cybersecurity. It's about something larger. It's about what happens when competence is treated as disposable, when integrity is punished, when the wrong people are put in charge of things they don't understand. ShieldCore is the answer to all of that. Not with bitterness, with engineering. After the meeting, I noticed Nathan was still in his seat when the room cleared, staring at the blank screen. I walked past him without a word. My message had been sent and received. When you've been underestimated or pushed out, did you go back bigger? Or did you find a completely new path? Share your story below. The comments are full of people who need to hear they're not alone. The launch exceeded every projection we had built. Press coverage focused on the technical innovation, but it also picked up the origin story. One headline read, "Fired for Ethics, How One Executive Turned Termination into a Movement." Orders overwhelmed our initial production capacity within 2 weeks. Small businesses across industries responded not just to what ShieldCore did, but to why it existed. And then Colonel Harmon gave an interview. He was asked what security solutions his office personally relied on. "I use ShieldCore now," he said. "Best security architecture I've encountered. And I'm proud to support a company that values integrity over surveillance." The interview went viral overnight. Orders doubled, then tripled. Our servers crashed from the traffic. Raymond called me the day after the interview went public. His voice had a quality I had never heard from him before. Something between awe and resignation. "This is bigger than we anticipated," he said. "Yes," I agreed. "The board is concerned. They worry ShieldCore is diverting your focus. The original contract with Harmon's office is progressing on schedule. My performance metrics are exemplary. Their concern isn't focus." I paused. "It's about what ShieldCore means for Nathan's reputation." Raymond went quiet. "The story is accurate," I said. "Sometimes accuracy is uncomfortable." I adjusted my grandfather's watch. And I said something that I had been waiting to say for months. What I want is for decisions to have real consequences. When Nathan fired me, he believed there would be none. You believed the same. The board believed the same. ShieldCore isn't revenge, Raymond. It's construction. I took the worst morning of my career and I built something from it. That's a lesson worth more than any apology. I left him to sit with that. 1 year after the morning I walked out of that elevator with a cardboard box and a watch that still kept perfect time. I stood in front of the company again. But everything was different now. The atmosphere in the room was not confusion or desperation. It was anticipation. And there is a profound difference between a room full of people waiting to find out if the ship is sinking, and a room full of people waiting to find out what you're going to build next. I stood at the front and let myself feel it, really feel it, before I spoke. The gratitude, the exhaustion, the strange, aching sweetness of having been broken completely and rebuilt into something stronger than I was before. 1 year ago, I said, I was fired from this company for refusing to compromise on security ethics. I walked out of here with a cardboard box and exactly 3 things that no one could take from me. My integrity, my knowledge, and 22 years of understanding what this industry actually needs. The room was perfectly quiet. You could hear the ventilation system. Today, I want to announce 2 things. The first, ShieldCore will incorporate as a fully independent company effective next month. This company retains its 30% ownership stake, a stake that, based on our current trajectory, will become the most valuable asset on your balance sheet. Applause broke out. Real applause. Not the polite, professional kind. The kind that happens when people who have been afraid finally feel safe enough to celebrate. I let it settle. And then I continued. The second announcement is personal to me. I had established a foundation, funded entirely by Shield Corps profits. The Technical Excellence Initiative. It would provide grants, mentorship, and legal support to experienced engineers who faced workplace discrimination, people who had been pushed out, overlooked, or silenced for standing on principle. I paused. I found Nathan Pierce in the audience. He was no longer hiding in the back row. He sat in the middle, diminished but present, and his eyes met mine for the first time in a year. I've been asked many times whether Shield Corps was built for revenge, I said. The answer is more complicated than yes or no. I walked to the edge of the stage. It was built because someone tried to reduce my professional worth to political compliance. And I refused, completely, absolutely refused, to accept that evaluation of myself. But revenge requires an enemy. And at this point, I don't have any enemies. I have lessons. I took a breath. The foundation will also include a fellowship program for individuals who have made significant professional errors and demonstrated genuine, documented growth in the time since. Because I believe that mistakes can define us, or they can transform us. That choice belongs to each of us individually. Tell me in the comments, what choice did you make? And if you've dealt with something similar, share your story. You are not alone. Subscribe for more stories about standing your ground and reclaiming your life. After the meeting, the room took a long time to empty. People lingered. They stopped me to talk, to shake my hand, to say things that I won't repeat here because they were private and they belonged to those moments. And then Nathan was standing in front of me. He was thinner than he'd been a year ago. The arrogance that had radiated from him like heat, the swagger he'd perfected in boardrooms before he was old enough to understand what a boardroom was actually for, it was gone. What was left was just a young man who had made a catastrophic mistake and had spent 12 months watching it compound into something he couldn't undo. He spoke quietly. The fellowship program. Is it real? Everything I build is functional, I said. He swallowed. Would I be qualified to apply? I studied him for a long moment. And I want to be honest with you. I felt something I hadn't expected to feel. Not satisfaction. Not victory. Something closer to grief. Because I had once looked at Nathan Pierce and seen potential that his father's money had buried under entitlement. And I wondered what he might have become, in different circumstances, with different guidance. The application process is rigorous, I said. It requires comprehensive self-assessment. No special access. No shortcuts. I understand that, he said. I need to run a different program. Be a different version of myself. I handed him my business card. The application deadline is in 2 weeks. He took the card with both hands. And I walked away. 2 months later, Shield Corps' independence became official. I remained connected to the original company as a board member and strategic consultant, but my primary world had shifted. I was building something that belonged entirely to its mission, and to the people whose work and ethics had made it possible. Nathan applied for the fellowship. His application was neither the strongest nor the weakest. The selection committee, which I deliberately excluded myself from, awarded him an alternative position. Not a full fellowship, but an acknowledgement of genuine growth. A door left open, not thrown wide. He sent me a single message when he received the decision. Thank you for the opportunity to be more than my worst decision. I didn't reply. But I saved the message. Because it mattered. Because all of it mattered, the cardboard box, the lobby, the silence of 22 colleagues, the legal pad at 3 in the morning, the contract signed under desperation, the late nights with Elena's team, the colonel's interview, the applause in that room. All of it. The original company never fully recovered its former market position. It stabilized as a smaller, more focused entity with better leadership. Raymond Pierce eventually stepped down, acknowledging that what came next required someone other than him. He was not wrong about that. As for Shield Corps, it grew beyond anything I had initially allowed myself to imagine. What began as a response to a single act of injustice became an enterprise that empowered thousands of businesses to maintain genuine security without sacrificing the privacy and dignity of the people inside them. We didn't just build a product. We built a philosophy. And that philosophy traveled to cities I'll never visit, to organizations I'll never meet, to engineers who needed to know that standing on principle is not a career-ending decision. It is a career-defining one. The revenge, if you want to call it that, was never in Nathan's demotion or the company's struggle. It was in my transformation of a moment that was designed to diminish me into a movement that elevated others. My grandfather's watch still sits on my wrist, worn smooth at the edges, still keeping perfect time. I adjust it sometimes, in meetings, and I think about him. A man who built things with his hands and his integrity, who left me nothing but this watch and the understanding that the most important things you carry cannot be confiscated by anyone. Sometimes the most powerful response to someone who tries to delete you from the system is to build a better system entirely. And that system, I discovered, can either exclude or include, depending entirely on how you choose to architect it. I chose to build mine with open doors. If this story reached you, if any part of it felt like something you needed to hear, please share it. Someone in your life is sitting with a cardboard box right now, wondering if it's over. Let them know it's not. It's just the beginning.